If you enjoy Modern Torah, subscribe and leave a review. I'd really appreciate it. Every year, Jews do something crazy. We finish reading the Torah and start it again on the same day. And every year, I look forward to leaving Moses and all his complex leadership challenges behind, to forget all the fear-mongering about what curses will befall the Israelites who lose their faith, and immerse myself instead in the simple family drama of Genesis. It's basically a multi-generational soap opera, beginning with Adam and Eve, all the way through Joseph and his brothers. But before any of that, there's the original beef of the Torah. Which comes first, the Aleph or the Bet? Aleph, after all, is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, but Bet is the first letter of the first word of the Torah, Bereshit, in the beginning. And just in case you think, maybe he's inventing this, here's the source material. And it all has to do with our perspective on the world. Bereshit Rabbah 1:10. Rabbi Yonah said in the name of Rabbi Levi, "Why was the world created with a bet? Just as a bet is closed on all sides and open in the front, so you are not permitted to say, what is beneath, what is above, what came before, what will come after." Bar Kappara said, "You have but to inquire about bygone ages that came before you, ever since God created humanity on earth. From the moment God created them, you may speculate. However, you may not speculate on what was before that. From one end of heaven to the other, on this you may speculate and investigate, but you may not speculate and investigate on what was before." Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi explained the creation story according to Bar Kappara. Why was the world created with a bet? To teach you that there are two worlds, this world and the world to come. Another interpretation. Why with a bet? Because it is an expression of Baruch, blessing. And why not with an Aleph? Because it is an expression of Aror, cursing. Another interpretation. Why not with an Aleph? So as not to give an argument to the heretics, who would say, how could the world endure, since it was created with an expression of curse? Rather, the Holy One of Blessing said, "Behold, I create it with an expression of blessing, and hopefully it will endure." For 26 generations, said Rabbi Eliezer Bar Chanina in the name of Rabbi Acha, the Aleph screamed injustice in front of the throne of the Holy One of Blessing, saying to God, "Master of the universe, I am the first of the letters, and you did not create the world with me." The Holy One of Blessing said to the Aleph, "The world and all what it contains were only created due to the merit of the Torah. As it is written, God set the earth with wisdom, with understanding he established the heavens." Tomorrow, I come to give the Torah at Sinai, and I'm going to open at first instance with you. As it says, Anochi, I'm Adonai your God. So, to recap, there's a dispute between Aleph and Bet, the letters. The Aleph is jealous, and apparently throwing a fit in front of the holy throne, because the Torah begins with the letter Bet, not the letter Aleph. The rabbis justified this first with spelling, pointing out that the Aleph is the first letter of Aror, meaning curse, while Bet is the first letter of Baruch, meaning blessing. Then the rabbis point to the physical shape of the letter Bet as a hidden metaphor for how the world is supposed to function, always looking forward, never back. The rabbis tell us this argument between Aleph and Bet lasted 26 generations, from the creation of the world until the day before God met Moses on Sinai, when, like an overtired parent, God finally says to the Aleph, "The Torah is the reason the world was created, and tomorrow I will give the Torah at Sinai, and it will begin with you. Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am the Lord your God." As funny as this make-believe argument is to imagine, it's also deeply troubling. There are undertones in the Aleph's protests of the same entitlement and privilege that plagues our world today, and the idea of only looking forward troubles me deeply, because it's only by looking back that we know how to move forward. But still, it's the elitist attitude the Aleph brings to the table that bothers me the most, the idea that someone should get something just because they want it, and that the Torah should begin with an Aleph for no better reason than that the Aleph says so. There are lots of memorable lines and scenes in this week's portion, the very first of the entire Torah. And perhaps one of the most famous is the death of Abel at the hands of his brother Cain. Cain, it turns out, felt just about as snubbed as the Aleph. And just like the Aleph, Cain really didn't have a good reason to be so mad at Abel. Genesis 4. In the course of time, Cain brought an offering to the Lord from the fruit of the soil, and Abel, for his part, brought the best of the firstlings of his flock. The Lord paid heed to Abel and his offering, but to Cain and his offering he paid no heed. Cain was much distressed, and his face fell. And the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you so distressed? And why is your face fallen? Surely, if you do right, there is uplift. But if you do not do right, sin couches at the door. Its urge is toward you, yet you can be its master." In his evasive responses to God, Cain wholeheartedly rejects the idea of being responsible for his brother. And later, Cain slays Abel in a field in the heat of an argument, and God curses Cain to a life of endless wandering, marked as a transgressor. One of my favorite Jewish quotes is Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another. Cain may have been the first to commit murder, but he certainly wasn't the last. Injustice is rampant in life. It has been for most of human history, and our modern world isn't any different. Yet our tradition still teaches that any transgression makes the entire world liable to be punished. And one place we can start to try and fix the transgressions and the injustice is with each other. At least 4 times this week, I've randomly put on a record by an artist who's no longer with us. Chris Cornell of Soundgarden and Scott Hutchison of Frightened Rabbit have been in my rotation recently, a lot. They're 2 remarkable human beings, genius songwriters and musicians, who struggled for years with mental health and depression, and both left this world on their own terms, far too young and far too alone for people who were beloved by so many. But when I listen closely to their songs, not only to the words they're singing, but how they're singing them, I can't say I'm surprised. They were telling us all along how desperate they were. We were all just too enthralled with their music to really hear it. 2020 has been a year of loss, and it's probably not over yet. As the clocks shift and we move into winter, with less daylight to encourage happiness, and more time on our hands to sit and think, and while the world does whatever the world is going to do over the next few weeks, mental health is a huge concern. As election season winds down in the United States, and we begin to understand what our future holds, I encourage all of us to consider our responsibility to each other, and how we can do better in living up to that responsibility than either the Aleph or Cain, how we can support those who have a greater stake in this election than we really know, and steel ourselves for the next few weeks, which, no matter what they end up holding, are bound to be depressing and stressful, at the very least. But maybe by holding each other as closely as possible, we can make the experience just a little bit better. Shabbat Shalom.